Right, this is a very, very special occasion today. This is our very first Quest presentations of our Pioneer Grade 8s. Woohoo! And I have to say, we are so incredibly proud of them. They have done an amazing job, as you're going to see in a few short minutes. They had some very lofty goals. I think when we looked at them at the start, we thought, well, they are very ambitious, and they might not have achieved absolutely everything they'd set out to achieve, but nonetheless, I think here at Green School, what is more important is the whole process. So we look at and they learn from the process that they went through, and they have developed so many skills. Research skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, and I think for me, as an educator, these 21st century skills are absolutely vital. So I think it has been hugely valuable, and I think they've gained a lot more than they would have at any mainstream school through this whole Quest project. It really has been quite something. So well done. And this is not the end. They're going to continue with their work. So this is just their presentation. Many of them plan to continue building their bike tracks and their medicinal gardens and their Jack's Day cookbook, which he'll tell you all about in a few minutes. And I think some of them even plan to kind of continue up until their Greenstone project in grade 12, which would be absolutely incredible. And we were talking about assessment yesterday and the cyclical nature of assessment. So it's not a linear process, this is not an end goal, but something that they can continue to work on and to refine. And so here today, I'm not here to judge. I'm here 100% to support you guys. I don't have my rubric here, so I'm not going to be assessing you. I'm just going to be here to support you, and I want you guys to absolutely enjoy it and just feel extremely proud of what you have all achieved. So well done. So without further ado, we're going to have the mentors come up and they will introduce their mentees one at a time. So thank you.
Hello everybody. I just want to say I feel extremely blessed and honoured to have worked with two of these youngsters, Ferg and Jack. You rock. It's been a special process for all of us. I think being the first ever Quest, we as teachers learned as much as the learners learned during this process, and it's been really, really special working with them one-on-one and actually getting to know the real heart of each student, which has been really special. So first up, Fergus. Fergus had a brilliant idea of starting a bike track at the school. He'll tell you more about it, but the process I followed with him was from early on, we walked around, we looked for areas that we could use. We were thinking initially a 2-kilometer bike track, how awesome would that be? And it's amazing how when you do the process and every day you set your goals and you try and achieve them, you become a little bit more realistic about what you can achieve. So I think this whole process for all the learners has been a big learning curve as to these are my dreams and what are the small steps to get there. And I think Fergus did exceptionally well in creating something that's sustainable and something that the kids are going to love at school. I hope, my dream for him is that he continues doing this until he gets to matric, and that when he leaves here we have a 2-kilometer bike track that all our kids can enjoy and love and spend time really, really doing what we love at Green School, and that is community events. So Ferg, up to you. Just before I hand over, I'm super proud of you, and smash it.
Hi, my name's Ferg, and I had the most awesome Quest project of building a mountain bike trail. Part of the Quest project is to pose a big question. And when I was thinking of mine, the first thing that came to my head was, how can we get kids who are in outside and having fun. Well, problem solved. All I'd have to do was build a trampoline park. But that's not so easy. Where was I going to get 1,440 springs from? So I decided to tone it down just a little and turn to something that I love, mountain biking. I chose this project because I just love mountain biking and the community that surrounds it. When I was 11, my dad took me for my first trail ride, and I loved it straight away. Over the next year, we rode more and more, and I got better and better. Eventually, we'd gotten ourselves up to a point where we were ready to hit the biggest trail on the mountain. We climbed for like hours, and when we finally made it to the top, we dropped in, excited and ready. The trail was everything we'd hoped for. It was just amazing. We rode it a couple more times, then gave it some time off to go explore other trails. Eventually, we came back, and we thought we were lost. We couldn't find the start of the trail, but the sign said that it began right where we stood. The forest had been cut down. My dad and I were devastated because this forest held so much life, and it just made the trail what it was. Me and my dad had a newfound respect for nature, and I would like for other people to feel that as well. When planning out the trail, I thought that if I could build a short run that was action-packed, a bit like a Tom Cruise sprinting scene from Mission Impossible, it would answer my question perfectly by getting kids outside, and they would benefit from the exercise of riding up and down the hill. We would build decent-sized jumps with smaller ones next to them so that beginners could get into jumping as well. While I was investigating the negative effects that too much gaming and screen time can have on kids and teenagers, I came across an article by Peter Grinsby from Harvard Medical Health School. He says that gaming can give people a loss of relationships, a loss of interest in other activities, a loss of educational or career opportunities, an affected tolerance, and it can give them frustration. Gaming can also make people angry or depressed. And kids haven't got a fully developed self-control system yet, so they are prone to addiction. This addiction leads to many late nights due to too much blue light exposure, which leads to exhaustion. Haven't you seen some of the kids these days? They look ready for retirement. Although gaming can teach you some things, gamers have been able to learn certain phrases in different languages, all the better to insult each other with. On the other hand, I found an article by the Brevard Medical Health Alliance. They say that when sunlight hits the skin, it triggers a process called vitamin D activation. Vitamin D is essential to the body since it helps in fighting conditions such as heart attacks and osteoporosis. That's just a fancy word for strong teeth and bones, kids. When you go outside, you will not need to look for supplements to your vitamin D needs. And you also get the benefit of exercise, which helps to combat issues in life, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, and your mental health. Going outside also helps in fighting conditions such as loneliness and depression. Humans evolved on a planet with a 24-hour cycle of light and dark, and our bodies are set up to work in partnership with sunlight. While I was building the trail, I came across many challenges. One of them was the heat, which made the dirt really hard to dig and wore everyone out really fast. I should have bought some Red Bull. Another one was the lack of time that I had. I attempted to combat this by staying off for school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I wish I could have had a bit more. When the term started, I met with Bruce and Valerie over the first week and showed them the perfect spot to build the trail. Over the next week, we raked out the main line and then moved on to building the first jump. Over the next 2 weeks, with the help of a huge team of people, we've gotten the jump done. It felt so great to be getting things going. Then we shifted our focus to slightly further up the trail, and in just 1 day, thanks to the team, we built a berm and the ride around to the creek gap. Then we went because, because it's action-packed, looks good, and is possibly a bit shorter than I'd like to admit.
Okay, well done, Faye. That was awesome. Okay, next up we have Amara. So I had the pleasure of working with Amara and Tessa through the Quest project. And yeah, we're all just so proud of you. When we first watched them practicing their speeches, I think a lot of the teachers were silently wiping away tears. So yeah, you've just worked so hard. She's put so much thought and effort into all the experiments that she's been doing. And yeah, you really tackled a very complex theme with a lot of confidence. So yeah, we're very proud of you, and yeah, come with a little presentation.
Imagine being an 8-year-old girl and hearing again and again from your teacher that you are not strong because you are a girl. How would you feel being told that? This is precisely what happened to me. As a young girl, I was confused and actually started to believe that I wasn't strong. This, coupled with the fact that karate, boxing, and even just going to the gym are seen as things that only boys do, made me feel like I spent the beginning of my life unable to become really strong. Fortunately, my parents were very clear on the fact that girls and boys are equal. And now, when I hear someone say anything that's stereotypical, especially a teacher, I speak out, because I know just how damaging it can be to have someone you look up to say that you can't do something because of something you can't change. We see this happen all over the world, except for in a much greater magnitude. People aren't just told that they can't do something, they're actually not given the opportunity at all. This doesn't just happen to girls. Boys are also pushed to not show their feelings and to appear manly. This isn't a thing. This is a concept made by society. Let's see what the grade 7s had to say about the phrase man up or be a man.
Just man up is not good enough, and that shouldn't just be a go-to thing for some people.
What does it mean?
More or less just means just get over it, don't worry about it, something you should worry about. But in some things, it does need to be worried about. It shouldn't just be a go-to thing when someone discusses something. You should actually come with it instead of just telling man up is something.
Okay, Lisa?
I think that what society has made be a man to get made out to be something more of be masculine and be strong and be the leader in the situation, rather than a man is actually just biologically a male.
Shanna?
Oh yeah. So I think when someone says to man, it's almost like compress your emotions and like hide them away and like ignore them completely. Because when like let's say a guy was crying, like if you just say go man up, that means you're compressing his emotions and not letting him be able to show. Yeah.
This is where my passion for gender equality started, from the words of a teacher that limited me to an opportunity to ensure that this doesn't happen to others through Quest. Hi everyone, my name's Amara. This is my Quest project. I linked the Sustainable Development Goal gender equality with my passion for cinematography to create a documentary. We were asked to start with a big question. And the original question was, what is the current level of gender equality amongst grade school students, and how does it differ amongst the grades? But I realized that this isn't something that's measurable, and I had to alter it slightly. It became, what is the current level of the understanding of gender equality, and how does it differ amongst the grades? This is a graph of the 30 days of Quest time that we had. I spent the majority on practical sessions doing experiments, some of it on research, a lot of it on reflection, and some of it preparing for this and for my pitch presentation. Gender is being reinforced every time a person engages in an activity that is seen as feminine or masculine. According to Weston Zimmerman, our gender-based behavior is our fault. Robert Blum also agrees that the gender myth becomes circular and reinforcing. An example would be that when a woman engages in an activity that is seen as not feminine, people react, and this just ends up reinforcing the fact that it's a gender stereotype. Now for my experiments. The whole documentary has almost been finished, and there will be a screening, but we haven't decided on the time or date yet. Belinda Lanks wrote in the Johns Hopkins Health Review that stereotypical differences are socially, not biologically determined. This means that they're created by our society, not by what people are born with. This made a lot of sense to me, and I wanted a way to prove this. So, I carried out a bunch of different experiments, some of which I will talk about right now. I started off by observing kindy break time, and I found that even though there were some boys playing with Barbies and some girls playing with trucks, it was still very clear that there was a separation between who played with who. Girls were only playing with girls, and boys were only playing with boys. The next experiment I carried out was a color experiment. An example of a stereotype is that girls like pink and boys like blue. I wanted to see if this is true, so I asked grade R to draw a circle using either a blue or pink marker. Most of grade R didn't really have a preference, but a quarter of the class was very clear that pink was a girl's color and boys couldn't like pink. I received the answer from a kindy girl that she chose pink because her friend likes pink, and I realized that I had overlooked a point. Although parents can have an influence on children's gender development, their impact can sometimes be overestimated. Family members, peers, teachers, the media can also have a large impact on their children. This is part of why I had to change my big question. One suggestion that Campbell Leaper made was that in order to change to remove the stereotypes from children's mindset, parents can make a concerted effort to discuss and challenge gender stereotypes. Conversation is key. The next experiment I carried out was called Like a Girl and Like a Boy. I asked grade R, grade 1, grade R, grade 4, and middle school to run, throw, and fight like a girl. I found that grade R didn't really understand what I was asking, so they didn't actually understand the stereotypes yet. I received answers like, girls can't run like boys, or I don't know how to run like a boy, I'm a girl. Then when I got to grade 4, some of the class people were ran in a very stereotypically girly way. Tessa, would you like to demonstrate? Thank you, Tessa. And then when I asked middle school, it was very clear that these stereotypes were a part of everyday life. Like a girl is used as an insult in so many ways, and be a man or man up is used to tell people to be tough. This just enforces the stereotype that girls are weak and boys are tough. I then had a discussion with grade 4 and grade 2, and I asked them, can boys wear dresses and what is a stereotype? Grade 2 was really interesting because there were some boys who were okay with wearing dresses and actually liked to, but some that thought it was absolutely ridiculous. This was a little bit of a hard conversation to have because there were two very different opinions. Thankfully, Marie helped me a lot. Then, someone in grade 4 brought up the point that dresses were designed for girls, so that's why they didn't wear dresses. This is a very valid point. The next experiment was a drawing experiment. Grade 1, grade 2, and grade 4 will remember this. I asked them to draw different occupations to see whether they assigned female or male to that occupation. I found that the caregiver, teachers, and nurses and cleaners were drawn as mostly female from the grade 1s. This follows the stereotype. The pilots and the presidents were mostly drawn as male. With grade 2, I found similar results, where the caregivers, teachers, nurses, and cleaners were drawn as female, like the grade 1s, but the pilots, 6 were drawn as female, 6 were drawn as male, and the presidents, majority were drawn as male. Then with the grade 4s, it was interesting to see that the doctors, pilots, and presidents followed the stereotype, but the cleaner did not. This is the overall graph. As you can see, majority followed the stereotype, some were equal, and only the doctors that the grade 1s drew went against the stereotype that doctors are male. I then created the label Stereotype Defiers, and I talked to 4 different people about their experience defying stereotypes. This meant that they went against stereotypes in their occupation. The first was Jade, a current Emirates pilot.
My name is, full name actually is Crystal Jade Walker, and I'm a pilot, an airline pilot or commercial pilot, fly for Emirates, based in Dubai.
Then I talked to Yvonne van den Doel, who was the first female South African pilot to get a commercial flying license.
I feel that it is essential for pupils, or learners as they call them nowadays, to spread out and extend and use their abilities, and this is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you very much. I am Yvonne van den Doel, and I live in Hermanus, and all my life, well, 34 years of it anyway, I was a commercial pilot. And at a time when women were not supposed to be doing this, according to the men. But that's where I disagreed with them, and my whole life was spent around having difficulties with the opposite sex where my job was concerned.
Then I talked to Robin.
Hi, my name is Robin. I've been a professional drummer for the past, I'd say, 15 years, and I currently play on and off for a wonderful band called Uncorked. We do super fundraising for many worthy causes, and I look forward to a few more adventures that are on the cards. So look out in the valley. Hopefully I'll be playing again soon.
She's also a professional Irish dance instructor. She goes against 2 different stereotypes. The first being that drummers are always male, she clearly is not, and the second being that female drummers are very masculine and have tattoos and piercings. She goes with the label of a girly girl and is very feminine. This is her playing drums. We also have our own stereotype defier in grade school. The grade 5s will know who he is. Who is it?
Mr. N!
That's right. These are the 4 stereotype defiers that I managed to contact. Now for the obstacles. The first obstacle was an easy fix. It was that some people weren't able to come into school due to location and COVID. So we just switched it to Zoom. And the second obstacle was that I started to stray from gender equality and focus more on the female side of things. This was really hard to overcome, seeing as I'm female, I understand the female stereotypes more than the male ones, which are just as important. All of the stereotype defier contacts I got were also female. So the way I overcame that was I looked for a stereotype defier who was male, and Heinrich. And then I also changed the like a girl experiment to include like a boy. I learned from this class project that I don't understand kids' humor. All throughout the documentary, the kids were all making jokes and it just flew past me. So if there's awkward silences, that's what it is. And then I also learned that I tended to leave things to the last minute. Hopefully I overcome this. The positive things I learned was that I can now edit, and my patience also improved with working with the younger grades. The main purpose of my documentary is for parents to understand why they have to have different conversations with their kids than the ones they had growing up. Parents need to have conversations with their kids about gender stereotypes and gender equality. Don't rely on others to do that for you. Thank you to Dom, my mentor. Thank you to the camera crew, Ciara, Nina, Gemma, Tessa. Thank you to parents who helped me get contacts, Carrie, Andy, Gemma. Thank you to Jeanette, Lisa, Marie, Asby, Deirdre, Mona. Thank you to Celeste for helping with the resources. Thank you to my stereotype defiers, Jade, Yvonne, Hamish, and Robin. And thank you to my parents and to my sisters for putting up with me through Quest. Could you please turn to look right there?
I am a girl, so I have to hide pain.
I am a boy, so I have to hide my emotions.
I'm a girl, so I can't be president.
I am a boy, so I can't wear a skirt. 1, 2, 3.
I am unique and I make my own decisions.
I am human. We are all human. We are all allowed to show our emotions.
Gender doesn't limit me. Who says clothes are just clothes?
Let's clap for Jack. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next Quest learner, grade 8. So I had the privilege of working with Finley, and he decided on creating and making a medicinal garden for the Green School community, which we are all very thankful for, because I think it's very much what we want to do here at Green School, and we're really looking forward to how we can harvest all the plants that he's been planting. And there has really been so many days where he has been working in the garden, putting in so much effort in the sun, and there were many times that he was very frustrated and tired, but he overcame all of those obstacles, and I just look forward to him continuing his garden, and then hopefully in the near future we will be drinking some medicinal tea and just using all of those medicinal benefits that he is planning on giving to us as a community. Well done, Finley, we're very proud of you, and good luck with your speech.
Hi, I'm Vinod Mozagino, and today I'll be discussing my Quest project, which happens to be about medicinal plants. So sit back and put your feet up as you're all in for a ride of how my project went down. I chose this Quest topic for my Quest because at a young age, I always thought plants that could heal you was something out of a fairy tale. And given my crazy imaginative mind, I would talk non-stop about this and even attempt to grow my own medicinal plants. But, as you can imagine, the only thing that needed curing was my parents' headache. As a kid, I remember reading so many books about medicinal plants, and that was when I found out about plague doctors. I thought they were the coolest things. At one stage, I wanted to even become one. People found them very strange. They always wore a bird mask, but this was actually due to the fact as they put medicinal plants and herbs at the tip of the beak. So whenever they took a breath, it was filled with the aroma of these plants. Given all that, it was not until a few months ago in class we were discussing the topic of alchemy, and plague doctors happened to be alchemists. And what made this even better was we had Quest right around the corner. And that was when I thought, wait a minute, I know this stuff. So, with no hesitation, I decided to build a medicinal garden and make medicinal tea for my first project. All that what drove me to build the garden. My project is to the SDG, Good Health and Wellbeing. Given tea is a great substance for your health and tastes really good. My big question was, how will I boost the immune system of the beautiful community, and how would I build a medicinal garden? I knew I needed to start by finding an area that would be suitable for the plants to grow. So I found out most plants like a dry soil and a breezy environment. Mentioned in Gremlin's Leslie Book of Herbs, he states gardenery prefer damp soil with a dry surrounding. This proved my point further on specific plants needing a certain environment to grow. Medicinal plants are made to prevent diseases, where modern medicine is made to cure it. Two different things, but yet play an important role. So after finding a suitable spot to plant, which happens to be right next to the century circle, I started clearing the area. I started clearing some shrubs, weeds, and grass. And oh boy, let me tell you how evil grass is. Let's just say, after I cleared the area, that was not the last time we'd hear about our enemy grass. So, I set out a perimeter of stones to show. I set out a perimeter of stones, showing this is where I would be planting my medicinal garden. So, now comes the real work. I had to dig up all the soil on the ground. So it was just me and a pickaxe. I dug up the whole area. Only to be told I had to dig up the grass roots. Easier said than done, because it took 3 whole weeks for me to do this. But, so with a lot of help with my friends and a few of the primary school classes, we eventually got there and finished. Now we are so close to finishing my garden, as with the help of Bruce and some of the gardeners, we got some fertilizer in our garden. Now we can finally start planting. Wasn't that a journey? This graph shows how many days I spent each week on my garden. As you can see, it slowly decreases, but I like to see this as an excuse. I finished it early, but really it was all the amount of work I had to do. School is still school after all. Here are some photos I did of the process. It was very interesting. Here's an interview I did of someone who has their own medicinal plant empire. His name is Judah James. He told me which plant is which and which ones are especially good in medicinal teas. He guided me from the very beginning and thankfully agreed to an interview. So, what's your name?
The name is James, Judah James.
Judah James. And how long have you been doing this for, planting all these vegetation?
I started this project with the initiated by the Botanical Society of South Africa, the municipality of Zulu.
Oh wow.
I started this project in 2006, exactly 15 years ago. Through the 6th of August, it's 15 years.
15, quite a while. And what motivated you to do this?
Being a bush doctor in South Africa, on the streets of South Africa, selling the medicine to the people. Yeah, I gained my knowledge from. See, this Botanical Society. It seems like they got this project in hand. And then we were looking for someone that can run a project like this in France. It's the first of its kind in South Africa. Demonstration in medicinal garden. And I was the right man. They took up a meeting with me, municipality, and we set a meeting, municipality and Botanical Society. And we take it from there.
Oh wow.
Here I am.
So it all started from there?
Still going on. Still started from there. Just elderly people that was getting me free involved in this. A lady called Anne Sutton, another lady called Jacqueline Cole. But Anne Sutton already passed 2011.
Do you have a small community built around this that you personally would give out your medicines to? Or
yeah, only the local people, even people from Cape Town. Everybody goes, I've been on television see it on television, from seeing it when they come in here, from Henderson, Flies, Cape Town, even from Koeberg, from all over, you see.
Oh, wow. And final question. Would you have a favorite plant, you would say?
Yeah, my favorite plant is the one that I saw in the radio, is the Adonolio castifolia, sandalwood.
Sandalwood.
Sandalwood, because it becomes sap, it's a sap, nice sap tree. Provides shade also, man. It's a nice tree to be.
And it's good for your throat.
It's good for the throat, yeah. It's good for measles, good for arthritis, package pain, liquids. It's a very good plant to every garden. It's a good plant.
Cool. Thank you.
Now to our challenges. The biggest challenge that I faced was the grass. We knew how much of a nuisance it could be. But we eventually overcame its evil weedy wrath with hard work and a whole lot of digging. After all this happened, I finally achieved my goal of making a medicinal garden. It took longer than expected, but oh boy, it was well worth it. I personally think I learned a lot from this experience, and a very big respect to the gardeners, because now I can say with confidence and experience, building a garden from scratch isn't easy. I think this built character for me, and I learned that you should never assume something before trying it out yourself. What am I going to do from here? Now that my garden is complete, I think I'll continue caring for it and hopefully helping it grow more. I put a huge amount of effort into this, so I can show you all this is not going to go to waste. For now, I hope to expand my garden and maybe gain more people to possibly one day take over my garden for me, as I hope this garden will stay when I'm long gone. Part of my aim of this project was providing medicinal tea for the Greensville community, so expect to see that in the future. Well, this brings me to the conclusion and sadly the end of my presentation. What I'm concluding is that medicinal tea are a great benefit to one's health, and I deeply encourage you all to drink more herbal tea, even if it's something as simple as a cup of rooibos once in a while. I would like to thank all my friends for helping me to the beginning and to the end. I'm going to thank my parents for helping me along the whole way. And lastly, I would like to thank all the teachers who have guided me along this journey. I thank you all for being here and helping me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Blessed when Deirdre came to me. I think she knows I love to climb mountains, and when she decided to give me this mentee, I thought she knows that this is going to be a mountain to climb, and we're going to work together on this, and we're going to make sure that we get to the end. So I would like to introduce Jack. Jack has done an exceptional job of creating some amazing recipes for the kitchen. I think the biggest compliment to Jack is this week the kitchen actually repeated one of his recipes, and the kids absolutely loved it. Jack, I know that in 10 years' time, when you've left here and you're not here anymore, I'm going to come visit you at your restaurant. I'm also really impressed. There was one day when I got to the kitchen, there was a little bit of tension. And I pulled Jack aside just to check that he was okay. And his response was, "This happens in kitchens. I'm absolutely fine." So he's really worked exceptionally hard. His resilience has been incredible. And the time and effort that he's put into this, I'm really looking forward to this cookbook. And I hope before he leaves grade 12 that we'll definitely see that cookbook. But I'm super proud of him, and yeah, good luck with your presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm Jack Stewart and I'm creating a healthy cookbook for my Quest project. My first experience with unhealthy food was around 4 years ago. I was out with my brother and my cousin in Canal Walk, and at this time I'd never had anything like McDonald's or KFC yet. I just had things like Steers and some of the slightly more healthy stuff. We were walking past a McDonald's and I wanted to try it for the first time. I asked my cousin if she would buy it for me, and she said that I had to ask my mom first. So I gave her a call, and she said that if I really wanted to try it, I could. So I ordered a Happy Meal, and we sat down to eat. I took a few bites of it, and I decided to throw it away. It didn't make me feel happy at all. In fact, because of the advertising, I was really excited about it, and I wanted to try one for a while, and I felt let down. It was either that my body didn't respond well to it, because I wasn't used to it, or that it was just that bad. Since then, I haven't even had the thought of trying one again. Because in my opinion, it just isn't worth it. Rather get Nando's, it's much healthier and tastes way better. Only every once in a while though. It won't turn out well otherwise. My big question has changed since the pitch. It is now, how do I make healthy recipes that kids will enjoy and get them excited about eating healthy foods? The Sustainable Development Goals my Quest ties into are number 3 and number 12. Good health and well-being and responsible consumption and production. The reason it ties into these SDGs is because I'm trying to limit waste and unhealthy consumption of bad foods like stuff with a lot of fats, sodiums, and preservatives. Some interesting facts. According to the World Heart Federation, unhealthy eating is linked to the 4 top causes of death. Health problems like obesity, high blood glucose, and high cholesterol. Today's fast food chains don't solve any of these problems. Not eating enough fruit and vegetables can lead to heart disease, and according to the World Heart Federation, 1.7 million deaths per year are caused because of heart disease. High dietary salt consumption can lead to high blood pressure, which is one of the biggest fatality risks in the world. To improve our diet, we can encourage people to eat more fruit and vegetables, and we can encourage schools to serve healthier foods to the kids of the world, just like grade school. What I'm doing is I'm doing a Jack Day, which is one of the days in the week that I cook for the school, and I get their feedback on the recipe that I had made that day. I've been developing my book by studying different recipes online and in physical cookbooks, and then getting inspiration from them and using that inspiration to write my recipes. One way I write my recipes is I think of a popular food from 2 different countries, and then I think of a way to combine them. For example, my first Jack Day, which was my pizza tortilla wrap, I thought of Italy and Mexico, pizza and burrito. The burrito part was the lentils and the peppers and so on, and the Italy part was the Napolitana sauce and the cheese. This recipe is healthy because it has vegetables like peppers, carrots, and broccoli in it. It is also healthy because tortillas are healthier than pizza bases, so you're taking the best of both worlds and making it healthier. They are also high in dietary fiber, and according to the World Heart Federation, eating foods high in dietary fiber, grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts, etc., can help you stay regular and lower your risk of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. It can also improve your skin and even help you lose weight. We try to use foods high in dietary fibers every week on the Jack Days. I have around 20 to 25 recipes done. I'm aiming to do 50, including snacks, meals, and healthy treats, so I can have a 100-page book. So each recipe will have the recipe on the one page and a picture of the recipe on the other. Another real hit amongst the learners was my black bean burger, which was my second Jack Day. It was made with fresh rolls and a selection of fruits, vegetables, and a coleslaw. Instead of using butter, for the rolls we use avocado, because not all fat is the same. Bad fats can wreck your diet and increase your risk of certain diseases, while good fats can protect your heart and your brain, and avocado is a really healthy fat. My experience in the grade school kitchen has been great. It has been a bit tense and stressful at times, but that's how I get prepared for the real world, right? It has been an incredible experience so far. and it has really given me the idea of what it's like to be in a real kitchen. It has also let me experience the stress that comes with being a chef. But regardless of the stress that I've experienced so far, I still want to pursue my dream of becoming a chef. Some obstacles were kindy and research at the end. Kindy was hard because most of them were just throwing away so much food and not enjoying it. And this is an obstacle because it is something that I have to overcome and make my recipe better for the next week. And research was hard because I forgot about so much of it and then I had to do a huge amount of work to catch up. What I've managed to do so far is I've managed to create several recipes, and I've also managed to learn more about health issues and how eating affects your health through the research that I did. And in total, I managed to serve up 5 Jack Days, 5 meals on Jack Day. Some of the recipes that I made are pizza tortilla wraps, black bean burgers, healthy macaroni cheese, teriyaki tofu with charred spring onion, and a lemon blueberry croissant bake. I'd like to carry on with the recipe book and the Jack Days for another 2 to 3 years. I'd like to carry on with the Jack Days and the recipe book for another 2 to 3 years, depending on the workload and if it ties into all my other subjects. I'd like to finish the book and, if possible, get it published. In conclusion, I'd like to thank Madeleine and the kitchen team, Valerie and Deirdre. Madeleine and the kitchen team because they've been helping me on Jack Days. Valerie because she's my mentor and she has been reminding me constantly about the work that I have to do. And Deirdre because she has been helping me with my research and reflections and has also been keeping me in line. And a very special thanks to my beautiful mother, who has been helping me along the way of my life and has been inspiring me constantly about healthy foods and how to cook them. Thank you.
Okay, so the next questee is Mornay. I had the privilege of being her mentor and just working with her through this journey, and yeah, she has been also putting in a lot of work, and she's decided to look into natural pesticides, which is also another thing that we really value here at Green School, and it's also something that is going to contribute to our community, and yeah, we're really looking forward to what she's going to be doing. And the onion spray she's been developing, doing experiments and taking the data and checking if it's working, and at the end it was actually working, and she's even decided that she might just be starting a business into this. So we're really excited for you, Renee, and baie trots op jou. And a side note also, she's a little designer because she made the clothes that she's wearing, the t-shirt with the nice jewels and stuff. She made it herself. So maybe another business to start. Yeah, so we're looking forward to hear your speech.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Monique Goosen, as you all know, and today will I be presenting my quest project, a pesky bang on your plants. I'll start my presentation with a small poem that I've written. Roses are turning black, violets are dying. By using chemicals, the insects are crying. By killing nature, just wait. She'll get you later. So I'm starting a business next year. This is linked to my passion. Do you guys know that pesticides are going out of fashion? So enjoy my time here before I go there. If all the insects were to disappear within 15 years, life would end. But if all human beings would disappear within 15 chemicals and doing stuff in the garden. This is linked to SDG number 15, Life on Land. What's my big question? Who knows? My big question is, what alternatives of pesticides can I find in green school? According to green science, agrochemicals were introduced to enhance crop health and to protect crop from pests. Due to adaptation and resistance developed by pests to chemicals, every year higher amounts of new chemical compounds are used to protect crops, causing undesired side effects and rising the cost of food production. Meaning, the chemical pests can have a negative effect on humans' digestive system and the other living things. According to the article, The Danger of Pesticides, farmers cannot afford to lose their crops due to pesky insects. So, instead, some farmers spray chemicals and pesticides on them to repel the insects. Pesticides can also prevent diseases from spreading. So, using pesticides lower the risk of losing one's crops per season. Meaning, many farmers over the world use chemicals instead of eco-friendly sources. From my understanding of this article, Danger of Pesticides, these harmful pesticides are everywhere. And in today's society, people use the more convenient chemical way. Most of the farmers do this just to let their businesses grow. Yes, farmers do this because they need to provide for the families. But it's bringing our ecosystem down and it's not sustainable. At the start of our project, I researched different eco-friendly alternatives to pesticides and decided to try onion spray because the ingredients are easily available and it was relevantly easy to make. It consisted of onion, garlic, and chilies. I made a spray in the school kitchen and asked which plants can I test it on. We decided on the couch. I sprayed the leaves every week. We monitored the leaves and noticed that from the first to the fourth week, the leaves were looking healthier and with less holes. If you look at the graph, you will notice how the leaves' colors have changed over the few weeks that the plants that I sprayed. As you can see, the color red represents high standard sickness, and the color red is decreasing over the weeks. The color green represents healthy leaves. During the first week, only about half of the plants had healthy leaves. But by the fourth week, the leaves had healthy leaves and it has increased significantly. Another thing that I've looked into while doing my project was making bug boxes. Do you know, according to San Francisco Gately's article, bat guano is used as a type of material fertilizer for your plants to help them grow strong and healthy. It's dried in fertilizer form and it's available as a powder or small pellets. When mixed with water, the bat guano becomes a slow-release fertilizer. When in fertilizer high in nitrogen to create greener plants. Bats are also great for reducing the number of mosquitoes. helping the primary learners build back boxes during Stoppy Stuff. We built small boxes because we wanted to attract marker rats. The back boxes will be placed over the compost heap so that green school can collect the guano to use it for fertilizer. What were my challenges and how did I overcome them? The main obstacle for me was time, of course. The first week of spraying the plants, I did not see any changes, but I was patient. And on the third week, I saw change and kept going. The sixth week, I made a double mix of onion spray, and the day I had to spray, one of the gardeners used a spray can, and he didn't clean it very well. So I took the spray can and filled it with water and the onion mix. By the time I had to spray the plant, I saw soap bubbles came up. So then, the onion spray were mixed with chemicals and it was unusable. That was a real waste. By overcoming that obstacle, I made onion spray in my break time and also got some feedback from Bruce. By telling him what happened, he said that the spray is actually working and that he will get me my own spray can to spray the plants. I've learned some valuable lessons and skills. I've learned that giving up is not an option in life, and if you want to achieve something, you have to work hard towards it. I've learned that I'm good in the kitchen, and also when I chop onions, my eyes never tear. Overall, this project has been a success and a great learning experience. So, what's next? From here, I would like to explore different types of pesticides and create my own spray. I plan to develop new alternatives to pesticides and even try to start a business next year. I just want to say thank you to Mona, Danae, Dom, Alba, Jeanette, Deirdre, Bruce, Captain Andy, Wandri, Esme, family, friends, gardeners, kitchen staff, classmates, and also the green community for the support through the starting of Quest until now. Thank you all.
Well done, Monet. So last, but certainly not least, we have Tessa coming up. And Tessa, you've just worked so hard. She managed to learn how to crochet in a very short amount of time, and not just using yarn, but with plastic. So that's just a whole other level of skill. So we're very proud of you, and yeah, we're excited to see your presentation.
Hi, my name is Tessa and this is my Quest project. When I was younger, I used to go to the beach a lot with my family. There was one day where I was swimming in the rock pools and I saw this really cute octopus just swimming around in the cold day. I sat down for about 10 minutes admiring the small creature. He moved across the rocks, changing colors to try and blend in with his background. Then some boys noticed that I was staring at something, and they came up to me to investigate. They were immediately impressed at what I spotted, but they had other intentions. As soon as they saw him, they grabbed him out of the water, his home. The poor little octopus was thrown into the sand. I started walking over to them to ask them what they were doing, but just as I reached him, I saw the octopus stop moving. They stabbed him, but he hadn't died. I watched him try to crawl into the water away from the long house, but they stabbed him again and again and again. And until the poor innocent creature was limp and covered in holes. When starting this journey, we were taught to ask ourselves a big question. This is the question that will guide our project in the direction that we will take. The story that I have just related is one of many stories that opened my eyes to the suffering of animals. One of the ways that we are causing immense suffering for animals on the planet is through the appalling amounts of plastic that enter our oceans on a daily basis. So I started to consider how we can reduce the amount of plastic entering our oceans. One of the ways is by upcycling single-use plastic so it doesn't end up in the ocean. So my big question is, what useful product can I make out of single-use plastic to reduce the amount of plastic entering our oceans? As I researched, I found that plastic pollution is a much larger problem than you might think. Did you know that there's an ocean in the Pacific Ocean that's made entirely out of plastic? It's now known as the Pacific Garbage Patch, and it's almost twice the size of Texas. But did you know that 8 million tons of plastic escape into our oceans every year? That's equivalent of setting 5 garbage bags full of trash along every meter of the ocean around the world and coastline. According to National Geographic, the only way we can stop this is by preventing plastic from entering the ocean in the first place. Because once plastic's in the ocean, it's difficult, if not impossible, to get it all out. This is why I decided to try make use of the single-use plastic we already have. Once I decided on and pitched my idea for my project, I began my quest. I first started by collecting soft plastics, such as shopping bags and bread bags. My art teacher John then showed me how to turn those plastic bags into yarn. After discovering that it was possible to turn plastic into yarn, I asked the whole school to bring as many plastic bags as possible. A huge thank you to all of you who contributed to plastic waste. I ended up with plenty of bags full of plastic. I then began turning the plastic bags into yarn, and even got some help from the grade 4s, 6s, and 7s. It was fun, but some students ended up having a bit too much fun. And not to single anyone out, but got Jim in there.
Wait, my first name.
After turning all the plastic into yarn, I actually had to start using it. So with the crocheting hook and a lot of patience, I learned how to crochet. I then spent a lot of my time working through the plastic balls of yarn. I made a bunch of squares, which I then turned into things like bags and coasters. I ended up constructing one bag, which took a lot longer than I expected it to. It was quite disappointing to find out how long it actually took to crochet a bag, but I think in the end it was worth it. This is the bag that I made. I found that one of my bags used about 11 plastic bags to make. And although 11 plastic bags may not seem like a lot, I believe if I continue this project and teach others how to do this, we can help some of the ocean species that are on the critically endangered species list due to the amount of plastic entering our oceans. The WWF provides a detailed list of endangered marine life. Some of these animals include turtles, several different species of whales and sharks, seals and tuna. The list goes on. There are a concerning number of reasons why these animals are becoming endangered. A couple include animals getting caught in the plastic, which can lead to reduced mobility, starvation, drowning and suffocation, and even loss of limb due to amputation. Another reason is that the animals are eating plastic. When animals eat plastic, their stomach doesn't know how to process it. So over time, all the plastic that they eat adds up, and the animal ends up dying. One case was a young turtle that washed up on the shore of Brazil and died a few hours later. It was discovered that the turtle died due to the shocking amount of plastic in its stomach and gut. It was found that the turtle had During the course of my project, I faced some obstacles and challenges, like trying to collect enough plastic and learning how to crochet. But I think in the end, my biggest challenge was time. I made a planner to help manage my time, so I knew what I had to do on a daily basis. But when those tasks actually came, they ended up taking a lot longer than I had planned. The most time-consuming thing by far was crocheting the squares. The old ladies on YouTube made it look a lot easier than it actually was. I thought if I got some help from my classmates, it would make the process easier. But teaching them was a lot more challenging than I thought. From that, I discovered I wasn't a great teacher, and I now know why teachers have to train. I spend half the time nodding and saying well done when they're actually doing it very wrong. I did find 2 people that offered to... Oh, sorry. I did find 2 people that offered to help me, Wilhelmina and my mom. Wilhelmina made a beautiful circle, which I'm hoping I can crochet into a bag. And my mom decided to try knit with the yarn, and it actually turned out really well. I ended up using the knitted squares for the bottom of the bag. To date, I have learned how to make yarn out of plastic and crochet, which I'm hoping I can expand on and try to reduce the tons of plastic entering our oceans every year. I've also had the opportunity to develop some important 21st century skills. I think I've really improved on my self-management and planning skills, as well as my ability to research and present ideas. I'd like to say a big thank you to Dom for guiding me through my projects and also taught me how to crochet. I'd also like to say thank you to Myrna and Deirdre for helping me with all the research, and Wilhelmina and my mom for helping me crochet and knit, and also to grade 4s, 6s and 7s for helping me try crochet and make yarns, and also Amara for documenting a lot of it. Lastly, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who bought in plastic and supported the